Hello, my name is Tony Alexander, aka Captain America, and I want to talk to you today about work-life resources and the experience that I've had with them over the last couple of years. First, when we talk about work and life resources, we hear a lot about balance. I'm here to tell you today there's no such thing as a balance. What I've learned, and I hope most managers have learned, is work and life resources, you need to know when to put the time into each one. Time will come where you'll have to give more to yourself in your work life, and times will come where you'll have to give more to yourself in your personal life. So, the first experience that I want to share with you is one that will always go with me and be near to my heart. Every manager in here remembers their very first day on the job. You know, how excited you were to get the keys and how many different things that you were going to do and change. And one of the things might not have been to change people's lives, but this is exactly what happened to me on my first day. Finishing up my day at 5:30 p.m. in the evening, one of my assistants came to me and we sat down and we had a talk. He wanted to thank me for everything that I've done in the last 9 hours that he hadn't received from his managers or colleagues in the previous 5 years. I was taken aback, but I was humble about the fact that he wanted to thank me. We sat and we talked a little bit more. I got to learn more about the assistant and where he was going. The assistant then ended the conversation with a handshake and told me that at the end of the day, he was going home and he was going to kill his girlfriend and commit suicide himself. This is not at all what I anticipated as the first day on the job. So I knew I had to jump into crisis mode by telling the assistant to sit down and filling out a little more of the conversation. In this interim, I also notified the proper authorities to get him the adequate help that he needed. At this time, we were in the EAP program and it was transitioning over to work and life resources. With this, I found information where me as a manager knew the things that I had to do in order to save this employee and add value to his life. Once getting the employee enrolled into the program, it was a pretty easy process. We followed up with conference calls, we followed up with doctor's appointments, and we followed up with the proper doctor calls, conferences, and made sure that he received his appointments, and most importantly, that he was receiving his pay because he still needed to be able to sustain his way of living. About 6 months after the program, the assistant did not return to my location, but he did return to thank me for saving his life and for showing him that he added value not only to his girlfriend's life, but to all those that he encompassed. This is one story I'll always take to heart with me because I always feel that I was able to save someone's life and Walgreens put the information right in front of me and guided me on helping to save his life. My second story comes with an employee who happened to be sleeping in our car. I approached the employee because I noticed that her car was often in the parking lot after hours. I asked her if there was anything wrong, and her reply, of course, was no. As we all know, employees will only let you in if they want to let you in. So I decided to get with my EXA and do a few more reconnaissance missions, as we can say, or a few more scouts to find out what was going on with this employee. I took the time to drive back up to the store about 2:30 a.m. in the morning to find her car backed up in the parking lot in a far corner. I went over to the car and politely tapped on the glass, and it was my employee, and in addition to that, she had two small children in the back seat fast asleep. The first thing I knew what we needed to do was get her out of that car and into a nice warm place. So I drove her down to one of the in-town suites and booked her a room for the next 3 nights until I could find out what other options there were to offer her. I contacted Work and Life Resources, and I was just amazed from the conversation that we had and what programs were there to help her. It was amazing. Within a month, this employee went from living in her car to actually living in an apartment where Work and Life Resources picked up the monthly rent. This is something that most companies do not have. This is something that we often feel that we're being taken from, but we don't realize how much we're being given. Now, on the next story that I would like to tell you, and this is a personal one for me, and I have to say that Work and Life Resources is the reason that I can actually sit here today and talk about this experience. There's a little question on the My Voice survey that says, do you have a best friend at work? Well, I did have a best friend at work, and that all suddenly ended on August 11th, 3 years ago. This is one day that I'll never forget, and it took a long time for me to forgive myself, and that was through the help of Work and Life Resources. One of our fellow pharmacists, who I call my Walgreens wife, unfortunately had her life taken by her husband. It was very traumatic. It sent me into a spiral. It just took a lot. I felt I was in a place that I could never come back. I contacted Work and Life Resources, remembering that over the years, how much information was in there for the employees, not thinking that the information is in there for me as well. So I began to make a couple calls and kind of explain my situation. My supervisor was very supporting and encouraging of what I was going through at the time. Having my best friend at work gone added a lot of extra stress on my shoulders. And this was a person who I could call at 4 in the evening and say, my pharmacy is out of control. There's 100 labels on the counter. And not a problem. She would come over and she would help me out. The only thing she asked was, can you walk me out the door at night? And yeah, she needed to be walked out at night. It was a very different type of neighborhood. So that was the least I can do. But going back to getting over losing someone who you talk to every day at 2 o'clock on their way into work, and that one day that you don't get that call or that text message, but you do get a call and asked, are you somewhere sitting? In the back of my mind, I wanted to say no. I wanted to say yes. I didn't know what the answer was. I knew I'd been trying to contact my best friend at work for the last 2 hours and to no avail. When I received the news, it was very evident to my employees that something was wrong, and they immediately came to my rescue. All the things and all the times that I've been there for them,